أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. عن جابر بن عبد الله الأنصاري عن فاطمة الزهراء عليها السلام بنت رسول الله قال: سمعت فاطمة أنها قالت: دخل علي أبي رسول الله في بعض الأيام فقال: السلام عليك يا فاطمة. فقلت: وعليك السلام. قال: إني أجد في بدني ضعفا. فقلت له: أعيذك بالله يا أبتاه من الضعف. فقال: يا فاطمة ائتيني بالكساء اليماني فغطيني به. فأتيته بالكساء اليماني فغطيته به وسرت أنظر إليه وإذا وجهه يتلألأ كأنه البدر في ليلة تمامه وكماله. فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بوالدي الحسن قد أقبل فقال: السلام عليك يا أماه. فقلت: وعليك السلام يا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي. فقال: يا أماه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جد رسول الله. فقلت: نعم، إن جدك تحت الكساء. فأقبل الحسن نحو الكساء وقال: السلام عليك يا جداه يا رسول الله. أتأذن لي أن أدخل معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال: وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا صاحبي حوضي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل معه تحت الكساء فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بوالدي الحسين قد أقبل فقال: السلام عليك يا أماه. فقلت: وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي. فقال لي: يا أماه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جد رسول الله. فقلت: نعم، إن جدك وأخاك تحت الكساء. فدنا الحسين نحو الكساء فقال: السلام عليك يا جداه السلام عليك يا من اختار الله. أتأذن لي أن أدخل معكما تحت الكساء؟ فقال: وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا شافع أمتي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل معهما تحت الكساء فأقبل عند ذلك أبو الحسن علي بن أبي طالب وقال: السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله. فقلت: وعليك السلام يا أبا الحسن ويا أمير المؤمنين. فقال: يا فاطمة إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة أخي وابنه عم رسول الله. فقلت: نعم، ها هو مع ولديك تحت الكساء. فأقبل علي نحو الكساء فقال: السلام عليك يا رسول الله. أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال له: وعليك السلام يا أخي ويا وصي وخليفتي وصاحبي لوائي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل علي تحت الكساء ثم أتيت نحو الكساء وقلت: السلام عليك يا أبتاه يا رسول الله. أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال: وعليك السلام يا بنتي ويا بضعتي، قد أذنت لك. فدخلت تحت الكساء فلما اكتملنا جميعا تحت الكساء أخذ أبي رسول الله بطرف الكساء وأومأ بيده اليمنى إلى السماء وقال: اللهم إن هؤلاء أهل بيتي وخاصتي وحامتي، لحمهم لحمي ودمهم دمي، يؤلمني ما يؤلمهم ويحزنني ما يحزنهم. أنا حرب لمن حاربهم وسلم لمن سالمهم وعدو لمن عاداهم ومحب لمن أحبهم. إنهم مني أنا منهم. فاجعل صلواتك وبركاتك ورحمتك وغفرانك ورضوانك علي وعليهم، وأذهب عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. فقال الله عز وجل: يا ملائكتي ويا سكان سماواتي، إني ما خلقت السماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدحية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضية ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا في محبة هؤلاء الخمسة الذين هم تحت الكساء. فقال الأمين جبرائيل: يا ربي، ومن تحت الكساء؟ فقال عز وجل: هم أهل بيت النبوة ومعدن الرسالة، هم فاطمة وأبوها وبعلها وبنوها. فقال جبرائيل: يا ربي، أتأذن لي أن أهبط إلى الأرض لأكون معهم سادسا؟ فقال الله: نعم، قد أذنت لك. فهبط الأمين جبرائيل وقال: السلام عليك يا رسول الله. العلي الأعلى يقرأك السلام ويخصك بالتحية والإكرام، ويقول لك: وعزتي وجلالي إني ما خلقت السماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدحية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضية ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا لأجلكم ومحبتكم، وقد أذن لي أن أدخل معكم، فهل تأذن لي يا رسول الله؟ فقال رسول الله: وعليك السلام يا أمين وحي الله، إنه نعم، قد أذنت لك. فدخل جبرائيل معنا تحت الكساء، فقال لأبي: إن الله قد أوحى إليكم يقول: إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. فقال علي لأبي: يا رسول الله، أخبرني ما لجلوسنا هذا تحت الكساء من الفضل عند الله. فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وآله: والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا، ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض، وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا، إلا ونزلت عليهم الرحمة وحفت بهم الملائكة واستغفرت لهم إلى أن يتفرقوا. فقال علي عليه السلام: إذا والله فزنا وفاز شيعتنا ورب الكعبة. فقال أبي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله: يا علي، والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا، ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض، وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا، وفيهم محموم، إلا وفرج الله حمه، ولا مغموم إلا وكشف الله غمه، ولا طالب حاجة إلا وقضى الله حاجته. فقال علي عليه السلام: إذا والله فزنا وسعدنا، وكذلك شيعتنا فازوا وسعدوا في الدنيا والآخرة ورب الكعبة.
رحم الله من قرأ سورة الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Before we begin, can we just request that people move up as close as possible so when people come in, we have to move.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Maybe over here too. Mix it up a little bit. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين. صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا رسول الله وعلى أهل بيتك المذلومين. صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي مولاي وابن مولاي يا أبا عبد الله يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة يا غريب يا مذلوم كربلاء. ما خاب من تمسك بكم والعمن من لجأ إليكم سادتي. يا ليتنا يا ليتنا يا ليتنا كنا معكم فنفوز والله فوزا عظيما. قال الله العظيم في محكم كتابه الكريم والقول كالحق ولصدق القائلين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وإن طائفتان من المؤمنين اقتتلوا فأصلحوا بينهما فإن بغت إحداهما على الأخرى فقاتلوا التي تبغي حتى تفي إلى أمر الله فإن فاءت فأصلحوا بينهما بالعدل وأقسطوا إن الله يحب المقسطين. إنما المؤمنون إخوة فأصلحوا بين أخويكم واتقوا الله لعلكم ترحمون. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على Yesterday in our discussion of verse 7 of chapter 49 of the Holy Quran, Surah Al-Hujurat, we spoke about the importance of leadership, and specifically the leadership of our Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. And we see in this particular verse of the Holy Quran that after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states, وَأَعْلَمُ أَنَّ فِيكُمْ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ, and know that amongst you is Rasulullah. After that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the concept of love, which is why briefly yesterday we mentioned that once someone understands the position of a leader in society, or a leader in community, or a leader even in their household, and they begin to recognize their justice, and they begin to recognize their morals, and they begin to recognize their virtues, then it becomes the responsibility of those people to love their leader, and to support their leader, and act in accordance with the teachings of their leader. Which is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states, وَأَعْلَمُ أَنَّ فِيكُمْ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ, that amongst you is the Holy Prophet. Then after that, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He states in verse 7 that after that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala حَبَّبَ إِلَيْكُمُ الْإِيمَانِ, He has put in your hearts love, and He's put in your hearts faith. وَزَيَّنَ فِي قُلُوبِكُمْ, and He's adorned your hearts with this love. And then we gave specific examples in regards to practical manners in history, where individuals, they express their love in the greatest degree to Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salatu wassalam on the day of Ashura. But let me just say something. Because the verse after that, verse 8 of Surah Al-Hujurat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He states that we've placed this love inside of your heart. And then He states, فَضْلًا مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَنِعْمَةً, that this love that is within your hearts, the hearts of the believers, that is a gift that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you. Which is why today, especially in these days of Ashur, many times when people are listening to Majalis or hearing Majalis on the internet or coming to the masajid, they see several things. Young people especially, they say, what is with all of this poetry? What is with all of this emotion? They say we need things that are more intellectual. We need things that are expressed with more logic. No, let me tell you something. That this love that we have of Ahlul Bayt, this love that we have of Rasulullah and of Imam al-Hussein, and the tears that come down and the screams that are let out, this is a blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given and put into the hearts of only the ones that He loves. فَضْلٌ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَنِعْمَةً, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states. And then verse number 8, He says that this love that we've given you is a gift. It's an honor. You have been privileged with the love of Rasulullah. You have been privileged with coming to the Majalis of Imam al-Hussein. It is not something small. It is not something light. That this is the greatest blessing that we have. Which is why when people talk about spiritual elevation, we have a tradition that states that on the Day of Judgment, there will be a group of people who will have attained the greatest station in paradise. The greatest station. They're at the highest of the high. It is said that everyone will go to them and say, "Oh people, who are you? Are you ulama? Are you prophets? Are you this? Are you that?" I said, "No, we're none of that." Said, "Then who are you?" They'll say that we are the ones who expressed our love for Rasulullah and his family so much that tears began to come down from our eyes. Which is why this thing, these majalis, these rituals, again and again and again, every day, we must remind ourselves that this is a great blessing that we have received. Anyhow, we continue with our discussion in the next verse of Surah Al-Hujurat, chapter 49 of the Holy Quran, verse number 9. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states, وَإِن طَائِفَتَانِ مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ اقْتَتَلُوا فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَهُمَا. That if there are two parties, two groups of people who are in conflict, who are in battle, that you must go ahead and create peace between them. For if we were to go ahead and take a look at the traditions of the Ahlul Bayt, alayhim salatu wassalam, we find that there are so many ahadith about those who create peace between two conflicting parties. We find that Amir al-Mu'mineen in his last will to Imam Hassan and Imam al-Hussein, he says, "O my two sons," he said, "let me tell you the greatest advice. The greatest advice is that if you see two people who are battling each other or who have a conflict amongst each other, even if they are arguing in the market or on the streets, then be of those people who bring them together. Be of those people who bridge the gap between the two parties." The question comes that Amir al-Mu'mineen, he continues and he states, and he says, "Oh my sons Hassan and Hussein, I tell you this advice because your grandfather Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam has stated that bringing peace between two parties is greater than praying and fasting for an entire year." Why? Why so much stress on bringing this? You see that fighting an opposing party, even if it's in the name of justice, even if it's the name of Amr ibn Ma'ruf and Nahy anil Munkar, as we said yesterday, is something very simple, especially these days. We sit in front of our computers, or we bring our iPhone outside of our pockets, and we go on Facebook and we say, and we copy this link and we post it and we say, "Look what we did. Amr ibn Ma'ruf, Nahy anil Munkar." So simple. But what is even more difficult is bridging the gap between people. Which is why that the a'mal and the thawab that we get for doing that is even greater than speaking out. Even greater than fighting against the unjust party is the one who brings them closer toward the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Which is why we go ahead and we take a look, and if you open up the books of ahadith and rawayat, you find perhaps hundreds of traditions that speak about the importance of bridging the gap between two people. But this particular verse, verse number 9 of the Holy Quran, has been used throughout Islamic history in several practical applications. We find that perhaps, according to some of the Mufassirin, that this verse was revealed in honor of the Aws and the Khazraj. There were these two groups in Arabia. They would be fighting for 300 years. 300 years, they were in battle. It is said that historians, they write that these two groups, they had no idea how the battle or why this war even began in the first place. But they offer some hypothesis. They say that the first reason, or perhaps the only reason, why that these two tribes conflicted and were fighting a 300-year-long war is because one day, one of the youths from the particular tribe, he was chasing a grasshopper. He was playing in the yard. And accidentally, that grasshopper jumped into the village of the opposing tribe. He entered into it. They asked him, "Where are you from?" They said, "I am from Aus. I am from the opposing tribe." He said, "Oh, that's it." And they killed him. They killed him over a grasshopper. It is said that the opposing tribe, now what happens? They go and they take one of the other opposing children and they kill them. 300 years they were fighting a battle over an insect. Imagine. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when he comes toward Medina establishing the Islamic State, he comes and he calls up the representatives of the Aus. And he calls the representative of the Khazraj. And he sits before them and he says, "Do you even know why you're fighting this fight?" They said, "Because his great-great-great-grandfather killed my great-great-great-grandfather." He says, "Come on." And eventually, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this verse, وَإِن طَائِفَتَانْ مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ اقْتَتَلُوا فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَهُمَا. That if there are two groups of people and they are fighting, then make sure you are the one who bring forth peace between these two individuals. But you go ahead and you take a look at this particular verse of the Holy Quran, verse number 9, and you see that history has used this verse several different times for people's own political gain and for a certain theological school, so they advance and so they are the attainment of wealth or power. We go ahead and we take a look at the first time that this particular verse of the Holy Quran, verse number 9 of chapter 49 of the Holy Quran was used, was during the time of the battle of Siffin. We see that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam had one of his most closest companions was a man by the name of Ammar ibn Yasir. We all know that Ammar ibn Yasir was one of the closest companions of Rasulullah and of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wasalam. Ammar ibn Yasir's parents are Yasir and Sumayya. They were the first shuhada in the history of the religion of Islam. We see that Ammar ibn Yasir was so close to Rasulullah, and that he would sit in the closest gatherings, in the most intimate gatherings, attaining knowledge from the Holy Prophet and from Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wasalam. One day, Ammar ibn Yasir, he asks Rasulullah in front of several different companions, said, "Oh Rasulullah, how am I going to die?" And the Prophet responds, "تَقْتُلُ أَمَّارًا الْفِئَةُ الْبَاغِيَةُ." He says, "Oh Ammar, you are going to be killed by the group of people who are amongst the transgressors." If we go back to verse number 9 of the Holy Quran, this particular verse that we are discussing, we see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states that if there are two groups and they are conflicting or they are fighting, then bring peace between them. But if one of them goes against the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even after you've tried to bring peace toward them, then be of those who stand and fight against them. The word that he uses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this group of individuals who transgress the boundaries, is fi'at al-baghiyah. The same words that Rasulullah used to express the killers of Ali ibn Abi Talib. In the battle of Siffin, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wasalam comes forth to fight against Muawiyah ibn Abu Sufyan. On his side, one of the commanders of his army is Ammar ibn Yasir, who some historical reports was that he was over 80 years old at this time. It is stated that Ammar ibn Yasir, he was killed by the opposing party of Muawiyah ibn Abu Sufyan. When the news came that Ammar ibn Yasir had been killed, a group of individuals from the army of Muawiyah, they went to him and they said, "Oh Muawiyah, we were there when Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam stated that the one who kills Ammar ibn Yasir will be the opposing party, will be the transgressing group." After that, immediately, Muawiyah is the king of propaganda. For we know that Muawiyah, he spread such propaganda against Ali ibn Abi Talib that we cannot imagine, because this propaganda exists till today in the books and in the scholarship of so many academic schools. For example, that we know that when Ali ibn Abi Talib was killed in the mihrab of Masjid Kufa, when the news came to Damascus that Ali ibn Abi Talib had been killed, they asked, how was Ali killed? And they said Ali was killed while he was in prayers. The people of Damascus, the people of Syria, the people of Muawiyah, they state Ali prayed. Ali prayed. Because of the propaganda that was felt. It is stated, some historians they write, that in Damascus, Muawiyah had spread such propaganda, way more than Fox News, way more than CNN, about Ali ibn Abi Talib, that when they wanted to scare their kids and say, sometimes when we tell our kids, we tell them, if you don't do this, this thing is going to happen to you. They went and they would go and tell their kids that if you don't listen to me, Ali ibn Abi Talib is going to come into your dream. And their kids would start behaving. So when the news had come in the camp of Muawiyah that Ammar ibn Yasir had been killed, this group of individuals, they went to Muawiyah. They say, oh Muawiyah, we heard Rasulullah say that the transgressors will be the killers of Muawiyah. You are the transgressor. Muawiyah responds, who brought him to battle? Ali ibn Abi Talib. Thus Ali ibn Abi Talib is the killer of Muawiyah. And I don't know how, I don't know where, that these people's intellect stood, that they accepted the words of Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. Anyhow, we go ahead and we see a third instance where this particular verse was used politically for a political slogan. We see that also in the Battle of Siffin, so ironically, that on one side it was used by Muawiyah, and the other side it was used by the Khawarij. We see that in the Battle of Siffin, if we were to read history, we see that Amir al-Mu'mineen had sent his closest companion, Malik al-Ashtar. Malik al-Ashtar is the one who Amir al-Mu'mineen states that he was to me like I was to Rasulullah. This great personality, Malik al-Ashtar. Malik al-Ashtar is also the same man who Amir al-Mu'mineen writes his famous letter number 53 of Nahj al-Balagha to, as he appoints him toward being the governor of Egypt. Malik al-Ashtar, he comes on the battlefield at Siffin, and it is said that he is about to destroy the entire camp. One by one, he destroys each and every one of them until he's about to approach the final tent, and that is the tent of Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan and Amr ibn al-As and the like. It is said that at that moment, Muawiyah, sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. It stated that at that moment, as Malik al-Ashtar was about to defeat the camp of Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, Muawiyah came out. He took Qur'ans and he put it on the top of spears. And he raised the spears. And he said, O Muslims of Ali, listen to me that I am fighting for the Qur'an. And what is Ali fighting for? This group of individuals known as the Khawarij, they came to Ali ibn Abi Talib. And they said, oh Ali, make sure you call back Malik al-Ashtar because Muawiyah is a Muslim. Look at him, he's fighting for the Qur'an. Amir al-Mu'mineen said, I'm not going to stop because of this propaganda of Muawiyah. We need to continue and we need to defeat him. At this minute, Amir al-Mu'mineen is approached by this group of Khawarij with swords, and they say, oh Ali, if you are not going to call back Malik al-Ashtar and sign a treaty with Muawiyah, then we are going to kill you and all of the Muslims. At that moment, Amir al-Mu'mineen, he sent one of his messengers to bring back Malik al-Ashtar. Malik al-Ashtar, he comes back to Ali ibn Abi Talib, and he says, oh Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says, I was about to defeat them. If you just gave me a couple of more hours, I would have finished them off. At that moment, Amir al-Mu'mineen says, be patient. Be patient, because now we are trying to bring peace between the two groups. It is said that at that moment, Ali ibn Abi Talib, he came to the forefront. He came toward Muawiyah. And the Khawarij, they kept on insisting that Amir al-Mu'mineen signs a treaty with a negotiating party with Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. So it is said that Ali ibn Abi Talib, he appoints his cousin Abdullah ibn Abbas. That if you go and read a hadith or you read Quranic tafsir, you will realize that so many of our traditions are narrated by this man, Abdullah ibn Abbas. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, oh Ibn Abbas, you go and you sign the treaty with Muawiyah's representative. Who was Muawiyah's representative? A man by the name of Amr ibn al-As. Amr ibn al-As is the mind behind Muawiyah. He's the mind behind Banu Umayyah. They said that at this moment, the Khawarij, they come to Amir al-Mu'mineen. They said, oh Ali, we do not accept because you are sending your relative. Amir al-Mu'mineen's cousin was Ibn Abbas. He said, we do not accept because you are sending your relative. And perhaps you are not going to truly sign this treaty with Muawiyah with good intentions. It is said that Amir al-Mu'mineen said, I don't know what to do anymore. You guys decide. They came and they said, "Oh, Ali, we want to choose Abu Musa al-Ash'ari." Amir al-Mu'minin said, "This man has absolutely no political knowledge. How can we go and send him to sign the treaty with Muawiyah?" They insisted. They insisted until they threatened again Amir al-Mu'minin. So Amir al-Mu'minin said, "Fine." Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, he comes forth to Amr ibn al-As. We all know the result. We don't want to get into the whole entire faction. But eventually Amr ibn al-As, he tricks Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. Muawiyah becomes the caliph of the Muslimin. To cut the story short, and at that moment when Muawiyah, once again he stood above them and he told Ali, "Now I am the caliph of the Muslimin, and oh Ali, you are the transgressor and you are my enemy and you are my opponent." At that minute the Khawarij came back and they said, "Oh Ali, why don't you fight this man?" In the beginning, they were the ones who caused Amir al-Mu'minin to write the treaty and stop fighting him. Now at the second moment, the Khawarij are saying, "Oh Ali, go and fight Muawiyah." And this was the beginning of the Battle of Nahrawan. So we go ahead and we take a look and we see that throughout Islamic history, that this particular verse of the Holy Quran, that many different theological schools use it to push their own agendas, to push their own political identity. First it was used by Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. Second, it was used by the Khawarij. And if we take a look throughout history of Banu Umayyah and Banu Abbas, we will always find that the same exact verse was being brought up to perform the same type of responsibilities or propaganda. Sallu ala Muhammad wa Which is why when we want to go ahead and we want to take a look at this verse, we take a look and we see that this verse speaks about bringing peace between two groups of individuals. But the question that people might ask is that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about in this verse about bringing peace between two conflicting parties, then why is it that Rasulullah led or came out with his mission of the religion of Islam with the sword, as some people may ask? Did Rasulullah spread the religion of Islam by the sword or no? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about in very clear verses in chapter 9 and 10 of the Holy Quran, of Surah Al-Hujurat, about the importance of brotherhood, and about the importance of bringing peace, and about the importance of justice, and about the importance of harmony. Then why did Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam fight 83 battles in only 8 years of his life? This is the question. That if we take a look at the life of Rasulullah and his prophethood, we see that the first 13 years of his prophethood were in Mecca, and the last 10 years of his prophethood were in Medina. That Rasulullah never fought one battle in his 13 years in Mecca. And in fact, his first few years in Medina, he also did not fight any battle. The first battle that the Holy Prophet fought was when he was age 55. Thus people, they come and they accuse Rasulullah and the Muslims, saying that your Prophet was a man who fought so many battles because he thought that he wanted to rule the entire world. He was a man who was power hungry. If someone is truly power hungry, why wouldn't he fight the war at the minute that he entered into Medina and established this massive Islamic state, number one? Number two, why would he start when he was age 55 in the later years of his life? Doesn't make any sense. But then the question comes, where did these 83 battles come from? First of all, we know that in the religion of Islam, that there's no battle fought except in self-defense or except with the leader of the religion of Islam, who is the Prophet or the Imam of the Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salatu wassalam. And these individuals have isma. They are infallible. When they perform a particular rite, when they go toward battle, or when they perform any action, we submit to their words. When we go and we take a look at these 83 battles in 8 years during the time of the Holy Prophet, we see that historians, they write that how many casualties took place in these 83 battles in 8 years? 800. 800 casualties, dead or injured, in 8 years in 83 battles. Do the math. That's less than 10 casualties per each war. That's hardly a war, no? Today, when we talk about suicide bombing that take place in Afghanistan or in Pakistan or in Iraq, you might have 80 people die in one day, 120 people die in one day. We're not trying to say that the loss of any life is insignificant, no, but rather that these were hardly battles, they were hardly wars in the way that we perceive them to be today. Rather, they were means of self-defense in order to bring peace and according to bring justice toward the religion of Islam. Which is why that according to Rasulullah and according to the Holy Quran, the greatest thing, the greatest act that Rasulullah accomplished during his prophethood was writing the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. Writing a treaty between the Muslims and the Quraysh. Not fighting a war, not his victory at Badr, not what happened at Uhud, not Khandaq, not Khaybar, not Hunayn, none of these things. But Rasulullah says that my greatest accomplishment was the treaty that I signed at Hudaybiyah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states in the Holy Quran, إِنَّا فَتَحْنَا لَكَ فَتْحًا مُبِينًا, that, oh Rasulullah, we've opened this massive, clear victory for you. When was this verse revealed? This verse was revealed when Rasulullah signed a treaty with the most vile, the most corrupt, the most evil, the most grotesque people in the history of humanity, and those were the opponents of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. That's when we want to talk about these verses of the Holy Quran in Surah Al-Hujurat. We have to understand that not only is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaking about two parties who are fighting in battle or who are fighting in war, but also to bridge gap between people in community, to bridge gap between family members. Whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He speaks about an extreme situation in the Quran, the next verse usually He explains the remedy of how to fix that problem. Let me give you an example. In Surah An-Nur, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks several times about the problem in social society, about adultery. Every single time Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about this verse, the next verse after that, He speaks about how to rectify this particular issue. He states that you have to go and take it to the Islamic judge and allow these certain punishments to take place and allow these people to begin to follow the laws, and so on and so forth. In detail, you can find in the Holy Quran. You find that another verse of the Holy Quran, I believe in Surah Al-Ma'idah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about talaq, He speaks about divorce. Immediately after He speaks about divorce, the very next verses right after that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins to speak about the importance of building a relationship within a community. Because if a community is strong and people know each other, then the likeliness of divorce declines a great bit. Similarly, in verse number 9 of the Holy Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about two groups of individuals, known as the mu'mineen. وَإِن طَائِفَتَانِ مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ اقْتَتَلُوا فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَهُمَا. If they are conflicting, and if they are fighting, and if they are arguing, and if they have differences, then create this unity, this peace between them. And if one of them continues to proceed and continues to transgress, then allow the other group to go and fight them until they submit, or persuade them until they submit toward the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then in verse number 10 of Surah Al-Hujurat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةً, that surely the believers are brothers. Again, verse number 9, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about how the believers are fighters. Then the very next verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about how believers, they're brothers. There's a sense of brotherhood between them. In fact, if we go and we take a look at this verse in the Arabic language, we see that it states, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةً. The first word in this verse is إِنَّمَا. إِنَّمَا in the Arabic language means to specify something, to make something very specific. For example, in the Holy Quran, we say, إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمْ رِجْسَ أَهْلِ الْبَيْتِ وَيُطَهِّرَكُمْ تَطْهِيرًا. Allahumma salli ala. إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not want to do anything, nothing, except purify the household of Rasulullah and his Ahlul Bayt alayhim salatu wasalam. We find another verse of the Holy Quran, إِنَّمَا وَلِيُّكُمُ اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا الَّذِينَ يُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ وَيُؤْتُونَ الزَّكَاةَ وَهُمْ رَاكِعُونَ. That no one is your wali, as we mentioned, no one is your owner, no one is your master except who? Allah and Rasulullah, and the one who gives ruku', and the one who gives charity while he is in the state of ruku', Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam. Similarly, in this verse of the Holy Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةً, that if there are believing people, people who believe with their heart, and with their tongue, and with their bodies, and with their action, and with their etiquette, then they are considered brothers. Not like this nonsense that goes around today. That if you go and you read books and you read the internet and what is happening today, where every single group of Muslim calls another group of Muslim a kafir. This culture of takfir, as it is called, is the worst thing that could happen in a community. This chapter of the Holy Quran, chapter 49, Surah Al-Hujurat, emphasizes the importance of community, emphasizes the importance of justice, emphasizes the importance of leadership, emphasizes the importance of brotherhood. And look what these so-called Muslims or these self-proclaimed Muslims go out every single day, that if you do not believe this, you are a kafir. And if you do not believe this, you are a kafir. No. Where did this come from? When did this come from? If we go ahead, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةً, we are brothers. Where is this anger coming from? And this arrogance? And where do these ideologies come from? I swear to God, I don't know. I swear to God, I do not know. But this is certainly a root from Banu Umayyah, from Muawiyah and Yazid and their likes. When they come forth and they state that if you believe this thing about Allah, or if you do not believe this thing about Rasulullah, you are a kafir. Everybody's a kafir. No. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةً. Create unity between Muslims. Create unity, have brotherhood amongst you. This does not mean that when we speak about unity, we do not mean uniformity. We have our belief system. We believe in Ali ibn Abi Talib and Fatima al-Zahra and al-Hasan wal-Hussein and Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salatu wasalam. No doubt about it. That thing is not going to change. We are not going to change our identity. We are not going to change our rituals. We are not going to change our rights for anybody, and absolutely not. But that does not mean we go and we start claiming other people are kafir. Even amongst the school of Ahl al-Bayt, one group of individuals calls another group of individuals a kafir. If you believe this thing, you're a kafir. If you don't believe this thing, you're a kafir. Where is this? What is this? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةً. And amongst those other theological schools in the religion of Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not say that you go ahead and you call them kafir. No. As we mentioned the other day, go ahead and bring evidences, debate, discuss, no problem. Where is this? What is this talk? Swear to God, I have no idea where it came from. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He states in this verse very clearly that, O mu'mineen, you are brothers. There's a brotherhood amongst you. And when we go ahead and we take a look at all of the traditions of Ahl al-Bayt, we find that in one verse of the Holy Quran, in one tradition of the Ahl al-Bayt, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wa salam, He states that all of the Muslims are like brothers. And that if one of them gets sick, all of them get sick. If one of them is in pain, all of them are in pain. Another tradition states that if you wake up every single day in the morning and you do not reflect on what is happening to the Muslims in the other side of the world, then you are not from amongst the Muslimin. Look at the stress in brotherhood. Look at the stress in unity. Sallu ala Muhammad wa Which is why when we want to go ahead and we take a look at so many different Quranic examples, we see that in the Holy Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about this concept of brotherhood. He speaks about the concept of brotherhood when He speaks about it between Habil and Qabil. The first two children of Adam, we see that Qabil raised the weapon against Habil. He's about to strike him. How does Habil respond? He says, "Oh my brother." He says, "Even if you are about to strike me, know that I am not going to strike you." He says, "Because I know that I am being tried through you, and I fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala." So lesson number one in brotherhood, that amongst brothers, not only physical brothers, not only blood brothers, but brothers in the community, that the first step is to make sure that you know that that you are being tested through them, and they are being tested through you. We find another example in the Holy Quran. We find the example of Musa and Harun. We often recite this particular verse of the Holy Quran. رَبِّ اشْرَحْ لِي صَدْرِي وَيَسِّرْ لِي أَمْرِي وَاحْلُلْ عُقْدَةً مِّن لِّسَانِي يَفْقَهُ قَوْلِي وَاجْعَل لِّي وَزِيرًا مِّنْ أَهْلِ هَارُونَ أَخِي. Musa is very afraid to go forth toward Fir'aun. Musa, he knows that he has to go toward Fir'aun, protest toward him, tell him that he's a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But at this moment, he goes and he makes a dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he says, "Oh Allah, that I am very afraid at this moment. So make the knot on my tongue loose. Allow me to be eloquent before I go in front of Fir'aun. Make the burden from my chest be removed. And appoint for me a brother from my family. Appoint for me Harun as my protector and as my friend as we go toward Fir'aun." So we go ahead and we see lesson number 2 in brotherhood, that we know that our brothers can be companions in certain actions that we perform. We go ahead and we see the example of Yusuf alayhi salam and his 12 brothers. We see Yusuf alayhi salam is taken by his brothers. He is beat up so much and he is thrown into the well. We see that in this particular example, if we read the ahadith, it's not the way that we see it. Rather, when Yusuf was thrown into the well, traditions of Ahlul Bayt tell us that he was about to die. He was on the verge of death in his last moments before that caravan from Egypt came to him. Imagine, Yusuf, just a young boy. He grows up to become, of course, the king of Egypt, the king of half of the world according to traditions. Yusuf stands in front of his brothers when they come, and what happens? Yusuf offers them forgiveness. How many times amongst community members, brothers in faith, brothers in religion, brothers in blood, how many times do we not forgive each other for the things that we are doing? How many grudges do we hold for years upon years upon years? Finally, we go ahead and we see the example of brotherhood between Rasulullah and Amir al-Mu'mineen. The first act of responsibility that the Prophet he acted upon the minute that he entered into Medina was he established brotherhood between the Muhajirin and the Ansar. He took one of those people from Mecca and he took one of those from Medina and he said, you are a brother to this. X is a brother to Y. A is a brother to B. One by one he set them all aligned until Ali ibn Abi Talib was alone and he said, oh Rasulullah. He says, and who is my brother on this day? And Rasulullah responds, Ya Ali, anta akhi fi dunya wal akhirah. He says, oh Ali, he says, oh Ali, you are my brother in this life and in the next life. Which is why when we talk about this concept of brotherhood, we see that in the religion of Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala places this great emphasis and places emphasis on human rights and respecting people no matter who they are. Not only your brother in faith, as Amir al-Mu'mineen says, أَمَّا أَخٌ لَكَ فِي الدِّينِ أَوْ نَذِيرٌ لَكَ فِي الْخَالِقِ. That either he is your brother in religion or he is your equal in humanity. Which is why we go ahead and we take a look. Ali ibn Abi Talib, in the battle of Jamal, he is riding on his horse. He comes back after his defeated Sam. Amr comes toward him, his servant, and says, oh my master, take this cold drink. You have been fighting. You are bruised. You are tired. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, oh Qambar, he said, did you give drink to those people over there? Qambar says, no. He says, how come you did not go and offer them drink first? Qambar says, oh Amir al-Mu'mineen, but those are our enemies. Those were the same people who were trying to shed your blood, oh Ali. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, and what matter does that make? Are they not my equal in humanity? Where do you find examples like Ahlul Bayt? On the night or on the day of Ashura in the morning after Salatul Fajr, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salatu was-salam, he was found behind one of the tents and he was weeping. He was crying. One of the companions, they came to Imam al-Hussein and they said, oh Aba Abdullah, why are you crying like this? Why are you crying in such a way? He said, I am crying because the enemy of Umar ibn Sa'ad is going to enter into the fires of hell because of their hatred for me. Which man thinks like this? Which people think like this? Where is Aba Abdullah? And where is everyone else? Where is the etiquette of Ahlul Bayt? And where is the etiquette of these people? I don't know. Tonight is the night of brothers. Tonight is the night of brotherhood. Tonight is the night where we remember the children of Zainab, salamullahi alayha. And Zainab, this lady, I swear to God, we don't know anything about Zainab. But this is also the night of the 6th of Muharram, where we dedicate the night to the women and the children of the household of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salatu wassalam. And we see that these women and these children and all of the examples that were set on the day of Ashura are all things that we can reflect on. That on the day of Ashura, Imam al-Hussein stands on the plains of Karbala, and on his right side is an 89-year-old man in Muslim ibn Awsajah. On his left-hand side, there is the noble man of Kufa. He has a slave, John. He has children as young as a 6-month-old infant. Another tradition states that there was a child born on the day of Ashura of Imam al-Hussein. 1 day old was this child of Imam al-Hussein. And he was also killed on the day of Ashura. We go ahead and we see people of all different types. But it was these women and these children who dedicated themselves toward Imam al-Hussein, which truly are the greatest example for us. We go ahead and we take a look, and we see one example. If you go ahead and you read the Maqatil, you see that every single individual who came onto the plains of Karbala to fight, every one of them, they recited poetry. They recited a line of poetry, introducing themselves toward the opponent. This was per the Arab custom. If you go ahead and you read, you can find the names of each and every one of the companions of Imam al-Hussein who were killed on the day of Ashura, except for one. We have no idea who he was. Listen to this. He came out. The narrations they write, they just call him Al-Ghulam al-Turki. This young man, this young boy, we don't know who he is, who his parents are, where he's from. It is said that he was coming, he was a young man, and he was running toward the army of Amr bin Sa'd. At that moment, one of the opponents they called out, they said, "Oh boy, who are you? Introduce yourself, recite your poetry, tell us who you are." At that moment he calls out, "Husaynun Amiri wa ni'mul Amir, Sururu Fu'adin Bashir Nadir, Ali wa Fatima Walida. هل تعلمون له من نذير." This boy, he comes out and he says, "Who cares who I am?" He says, "My master is Hussein, and what a master. He is the love and he is the beauty of my heart. His father is Ali, so who cares who my father is? His mother is Fatima, so who cares who my mother is?" And it is said that this boy went out and fought until he was killed. Example number one. Example number two. There was a boy by the name of Amr. Amr was 11 years old on the day of Ashura. He comes forth and he puts on the armor of his father. He was 11 years old. His father, the narration states, was a very big, strong man. The armor was so big that he could barely even walk. He was dragging it toward Imam al-Hussein. He came toward Abu Abdullah and he said, "Ya Abu Abdullah," he says, "I want to go and fight." Imam al-Hussein says, "Oh Amr, oh young boy," he said, "your father has just been killed. You have to take care of your mother." At this moment, the mother came from behind and said, "Oh Abu Abdullah," he says, "why are you rejecting my son?" He says that, "Oh my lady, that your husband had just been killed, this boy's father. How can I let you grieve over your husband and your son?" And listen to the response of the mother. She says, "Oh Abu Abdullah, that your mother Fatima al-Zahra is weeping over you today. How are you not going to allow me on the day of judgment to look at Fatima al-Zahra and say, 'Oh Fatima al-Zahra, that you wept for your son Abu Abdullah, now let me weep for my son as well.'" It is said that Imam al-Hussein gave him permission. He was dragging his armor, trying as best as he could, until he himself was also killed on the day of Ashura. But today is the day where we honor the two children of Zainab, Awn and Muhammad. It is stated that Imam al-Hussein, when he was leaving Medina, he got on top of the caravan, and as they were about to proceed, Abdullah ibn Jaffer, the husband of Lady Zainab, came forth toward Imam al-Hussein. Imam al-Hussein told Abdullah ibn Jaffer that, "Oh Abdullah, that I am going to take Zainab, because this is an aman from Rasulullah. But you go back and you stay, and you take care of the affairs of the family." Which is why it is said that at that moment, Abdullah ibn Ja'far, he goes back into his home after he embraces Imam al-Hussein and he embraces his wife, Lady Zainab. And as the caravan is about to leave, Abdullah ibn Ja'far, he comes running back with two children in his hand. One of them is Awn and the other one is Muhammad. One is 11, one is 10, the other narrations say 12 and 9, whatever it was. He came forth and he ran toward Imam al-Hussein. And he said, "Oh Abu Abdullah, if you're not going to take me, then take my elder son Awn to represent his grandfather, Ja'far al-Tayyar, the uncle of Imam al-Hussein, the brother of Ali ibn Abi Talib, and take the younger son Muhammad to represent your father Ali ibn Abi Talib on the day of Ashura." It is said that the traditions they write on the day of Ashura, after each and every one of them had been killed. And let me tell you something. Some people, they narrate the maqtal, they narrate the masa'ib, and they say that Al-Abbas was still alive, that he was one of the later ones to die. No doubt about that. But let me ask you a question. Would Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, he would allow kids to remain in the tent while he was still alive? I swear to God, I cannot believe that. In my opinion, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas had also been killed. That all of the men had been killed at this moment. And that is when Zainab came toward Abu Abdullah and said, "Oh, Imam al-Hussein, now today is my turn. Now is the time where you take my children as your defense." Imam al-Hussein says, "How can I take them?" Eventually, Zainab convinced Imam al-Hussein. At that moment, Imam al-Hussein allowed Awn and Muhammad to go and fight together in unison as brothers, as brotherhood. It is said that at that moment, Awn and Muhammad, they went out and they began to fight the army of Amr bin Sa'ad. Awn, the elder one, fought valiantly. They fought together. Every single time they would strike someone, they would look back and say, "Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah." "Oh, my uncle, are you proud of us and look at what we are doing today?" It is said that at that moment, the elder brother Awn, he called out, "Assalamu alayka ya Amma, ya Aba Abdullah." "Oh, my uncle, come toward my help." It is said that Imam al-Hussein, he was running. One narration, one poet, he writes that as Imam al-Hussein was going toward the elder brother Awn, Awn says, "Oh, Aba Abdullah, oh my uncle, go toward my other brother because I hear him calling." It is said that Imam al-Hussein, he goes toward Muhammad. As he's approaching him, he also calls out the call, "Assalamu alayk ya Aba Abdullah." But at that moment, Imam al-Hussein, he picks up these two sons, he picks up these two children, brings them toward Lady Zainab. It is said that Zainab never wept one tear for them. She picked them up, she put them behind the tent, and that was it. And then she looked up into the sky and she raised her hands and she said, "Oh Allah, accept the sacrifice from us." And I swear that that was not even the most difficult moment in the life of Lady Zainab. It is stated that in the last moments of the life of Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salatu wassalam, they came toward him as companions and they said, "Yabna Rasulullah," he was on his deathbed and he was weeping and he was crying, "Baka'un shadida." It is said they came toward him and they said, "Yabna Rasulullah, oh Imam, why are you crying? We've never seen you cry like this. You are a man who was always weeping for your father Abu Abdullah, but now you're about to visit Imam al-Hussein, you're about to visit Rasulullah. Why are you crying? Do you remember what happened on the day of Ashura?" He says, "No, I'm not crying because of what happened to Abu Abdullah." "Are you crying at the severed arms of Al-Abbas?" He said, "No, I'm not crying about that." "Are you crying about the trampled body of Qasim?" He said, "No." He said, "Are you crying about what happened to your nephews, to your cousins, Awn and Muhammad?" He said, "No, I'm not crying about that either." They said, "Yabna Rasulullah, O Imam Zainul Abidin, then why are you crying like this?" He said, "Because I remember what happened to Zainab on the night of the 11th of Muharram, as she began running from tent to tent as the tents were burning, when all of a sudden a man from behind came and slapped her in the face." ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. مات الحسين يا حسين يا حسين.
Before Ziyarat, just a few announcements. The first is we're trying to organize a blood drive in honor of Imam Hussein next week. In order to do that, we need 25 volunteers. I think we have about 10 so far, so if you're interested, there'll be a sign-up sheet going around. Second announcement is the town has actually told us that for us to continue to use the lot opposite the Mahfil and park on the surrounding streets, we have to purchase parking tickets, parking permits, which we have 100 here for sale today. It's $25 for the year, so that sign-up sheet will be going out as well. And then the last announcement is we have a question and answer session downstairs in the basement immediately following Ziyarat. And there's also Tabarruk downstairs, so we'll hope you'll join Ziyarat.